There is a brand new docu-series that just got released a couple of days ago called Girls Gone Wild, The Untold Story.
Oh, God.
So obviously I was not around for the cultural heyday of Girls Gone Wild, but, you know, it has a legacy that lives on to this day. And now Peacock is releasing this docu-series to go into an in-depth analysis of all of the untoward and possibly illegal actions that were involved in the making of these tapes.
Okay, let's watch it here.
Yeah.
Watch the piece.
Did you imagine that one day you'd be sitting in a chair to talk about Girls Gone Wild?
I figured at some point I get a knock on the door.
The whole fantasy was that it was real. The girl you've had a crush on comes up to you and says,
It was so shocking.
Hey, I'm over here.
It blew my mind what Joe Francis was able to convince these young girls to do.
If I took no for an answer, I wouldn't be where I was.
Joe Francis was everywhere.
he's hanging out with famous people. In the first 2 years, Girls Gone Wild made $20 million.
Girls were already pulling their tops off and flashing the jet as we were pulling in.
I never thought that that would come back and haunt me for 20 years.
Did you know it was hardcore? Yeah, I worked there.
I was too young to be taped.
I first realized that these girls were minors when I got arrested.
Were you concerned about starting at a company where the CEO was in prison?
I guess,
Joe Francis, what a miserable little...
Joe is out of control.
He's been a fugitive for a decade now.
Do you feel bad for the girls?
Wait, what were you asking?
Is he a fugitive still?
Yes.
Mexico.
He is living in Mexico in exile because he was sentenced to 270 days in jail for allegedly holding 3 women hostage in his home and allegedly assaulting one of them.
Don't we have an extradition?
During the, I don't know why they aren't extraditing him, but during the appeals process, he just moved to Mexico and hasn't come back since. That guy, Joe Francis, created it. They say before the spread of social media and easy access to online porn, Joe Francis's multi-million-dollar Girls Gone Wild franchise had a shocking grip on popular culture. In Girls Gone Wild, The Untold Story offers an astonishing and wide-ranging account of a man whose impact on culture cannot be overstated, whose alleged sins are numerous, and who now lives in exile on a sprawling estate in Mexico amidst the rubble of his once mighty empire. So they say they're making the case that this franchise still has a hand in shaping discourse and popular culture today, even as the women featured in these tapes continue to live with the scars of having been included in them. This is based largely on reporting by journalist and co-exec producer Sachi Cole, who interviewed Joe Francis at his home in 2022, where for a decade he has been living in exile out of reach of legal action against him in the U.S. He has vehemently and repeatedly denied all allegations against him. The lasting impact of Girls Gone Wild is much darker than even previous investigations presented. Some of the women who, as college students or younger, were featured prominently in the videos have never been able to escape them. Mm-hmm. As a number of them recount in the series, people still message them online or brazenly come up to them in person asking for autographs or to solicit further adult content. Because they did it once 25 years ago with the help of a few shots, they must be willing to do it on the spot again today, right? Former employees detail coercive tactics that they were encouraged to use to get women to reveal themselves for the videos, which went well beyond flashing and would sometimes lead to the women being plied with alcohol as they filmed hardcore scenes. Training videos reveal how camera operators were told not to take no for an answer. So that sounds illegal.
There's a 20 there.
At least some of it sounds illegal. Anger Overdose said, TMNT fans, if you like experimental industrial metal, please check out our newest track, The Great Extra Dimensional Brain Kill. It's an epic tribute to Krang.
Let's go.
Not not really my scene, but
go.
maybe you will check it out.
I mean, I like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
There you go.
What do you guys think so far? Is this exposing something that needs to be exposed, or is this making excuses for your bad behavior?
So this may be exposing things that need to be exposed. There is a bit of making excuses for your bad behavior, but at the end of the day, it's just exploiting the people involved, just like Girls Gone Wild did initially.
The first time.
Making this the whole point of making this is just capitalizing on the salacious stuff that happened back then.
An endless market for going back to the bad choices of the 90s and early 2000s and making money off of it once again, only in some type of wag your finger manner. There's a 20 there.
Go ahead.
We have Canadian dollars from Chris Cardinal. The fall of ideals is Chad vibes. Can Alberta get a shout out, guys?
Cheers. Love Alberta, Canada.
To
but
me,
yes, it is going back to the well, and it's repurposing the product that was made back then to be profitable today. It's wagging your finger at it, like it's not. And again, it's not saying that any of that stuff was good, but the reason that they're dragging it up and reason that they're making this is so that way they can say, well, this is a whole new angle we can take and make money off of that old thing. It's repurposing. It's like, everything gets a sequel. This is a modernized sequel. That's literally all it is.
Girls Gone Wild to Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah.
No, what it is to me is it's a microcosm of how feminism has changed these industries. So people in the chat, in the comments, are saying it was OnlyFans before OnlyFans existed. But much like in Hollywood, which doesn't like to make women look attractive on screen, but has no problem with women dressing attractive on red carpets because they make their own choice to do it, the elimination of the man as the middleman who gets to profit off of it is how they see that. So 20 years ago, it was different because men were pushing them to go do it. They weren't in their right mind. They were being told to do this by guys, and then against their own best interest, they later realized that what they did was a mistake. Whereas now, the lie that they tell you is that OnlyFans allows them to control their own content and put it out, when the truth of the matter is a lot of these people work for agencies, and there's going to be documentaries 20 years from now about how OnlyFans did the same thing to them, in my opinion.
For sure. Yeah. I think that'll be sooner than 20 years from now, actually.
Think so?
When there will be a reckoning for that industry. But I think there is a crowd of people talking past the other crowd of people. Obviously, this guy, Joe Francis, was training his employees to do things that were illegal.
I mean,
and at the same time, there were other things that were captured on video which were illegal that these women regret, and now they're placing the blame on the middleman instead of themselves. I do find it hard to believe that the women in these videos, 25 years on, are recognizable and get approached by strangers in the wild, recognizing them from Girls Gone Wild. I don't believe that happens.
Maybe if there was somebody who was on like a cover of a video.
Maybe. Even that. I'm like, really? Elijah Schaefer tweeted, "So here I am on camera years later to remind everyone who's already forgotten about that it happened, and also to alert all those who have never seen or never even saw the commercial that I was naked on camera. Seems like someone who is still looking for attention. You do you, though." So, yeah, there were a lot of cynical money-making incentives in the Me Too movement, and now its derivatives continue today.
I'm not even sure that this counts as part of the Me Too movement, because this is just like, this reminds me of the documentary on Vince McMahon that just came out on Netflix, which I thoroughly enjoyed because I was a fan of WWE and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, it is a documentary on stuff that happened, so I feel like it is a little different. But at the same time, like, it is looked at through today a lens of today, modern sensibilities.
Well, everything that they did in the Attitude Era to try and beat WCW couldn't be done today. The majority of it could not.
Yep.
Go back to watching DX imitate the Nation of Domination and have members doing actual blackface.
Yeah.
Which has been, forgotten for the most part, or, they don't mention it very much that they went out there and did that, but I digress. It would be, if you were to criticize that now, you're criticizing the behavior of, extremely competitive industries in the 90s when people were encouraged to be subversive and to push back against, the culture and not be so uptight. That was a hallmark of the late 90s, right? It was how far can you push things and get away with it?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't live in that lens anymore. You're not allowed to live in that lens.
Pushing the line nowadays, like even trying to push, is strongly frowned upon. We have a massively censorious and censorious society, and it's policed by the population.
Social media, right?
Well, not only social. What do you mean?
I'm just saying, the reason why companies and businesses would take risks back then is because the ratings are immediate, but the backlash comes later in the form of pamphlets and letters written to your head offices. Maybe some people call a helpline for or they call WWE main office to complain.
Yeah.
Now they just go immediately
media.
to your company's Twitter page and
Social
complain.
Media,
and
it allows for a small group of people to make it seem as if it's a large group of people that are complaining.
It's funny because that's what Tim was talking about the concept of scaling when it comes to a healthcare industry, right? If you have 100 clients and there's one person where something bad happens, then you have a 1% failure rate. But if you have 1 million clients and you have a 1% failure rate, then if that 1% goes on social media and complains, it seems like a lot more than it is because it's all happening in one place. The same would be true of complaints. Sure, you might have 150, 200 people complain about your product on social media, and that seems like a lot of it's all hitting your timeline at the same time. But how many hundreds of thousands watched it that didn't write you anything? You don't think about the hundreds of thousands that didn't say anything. You only think about the stuff that comes to you directly.
We have a 20 from Pop Culture Junkie. Can you effing believe the Girls Gone Wild half-hour infomercials ran late night on Comedy Central, MTV, and Spike?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I can't because I didn't watch those. But we have another 20 from Gordon Shumway. As much as Girls Gone Wild exploited these women, they mostly filmed at Mardi Gras, Lake Havasu, and Fantasy Fest. Girls were acting like that for free or beads. It was straight up degeneracy regardless of the cameras. Having not experienced this firsthand, given that I was in diapers for most of the relevancy of Girls Gone Wild, are they overstating the cultural impact?
I don't think so.
Was it really as big of a deal as they're saying it was?
I mean, it was a cultural phenomenon at the time. If you hear the name, you know what they're talking about. That's pretty indicative of whether something was relevant or not. I
think that it was. I don't think that they're overstating it. I don't know that it had an impact on society, but it was something that most people knew about. It was ubiquitous. Throughout society, as in people knew that it existed.
You're not going to talk to a millennial, somebody my age, and mention it, and they're going to say, what the hell is that? But that's not a thing.
The funny thing is my only impression of Girls Gone Wild and its existence was from watching Mean Girls, which came out in 2004, right?
Yep.
And there's this scene where they walk into Regina George's house, and she has a little sister who is not attended by her parents, not being supervised. She's watching this on the TV, and she's lifting up her shirt, imitating the girls that she's watching, which is more sinister than anything else. It's more sinister than what's happening to the college girls or what they're participating in is possibly the impact that it had on kids.
Mightier X in the chat says Mean Girls was trying to warn us 20 years ago.
Really? Yeah. Yes. Yep. Yeah, that's the only way. That is actually the only reason I know that Girls Gone Wild existed, because I watched that scene. And you can kind of see the similar effects reverberating from pornography and OnlyFans, where girls are in a way, groomed by the most successful creators on OnlyFans, making that lifestyle seem desirable and glamorous. And, you know, we're just having fun.
I don't know that it was glamorous, but I do think that it had a lot to do with feminism and with the
sex positive feminism.
Yeah, the sex positive feminism and the desire for young women to feel like they had the same rights as men, as young men. The idea that young men were always got out of everything with no accountability, which is not true, but that was presented to young women by the feminist movement strongly, and I think that's what you see a lot. A lot of people that are Gen X and even some older millennials, they believe that there should be a society where no one is accountable for any of their behavior, and that's the only way you're actually free. Free doesn't mean able to do things and then have to deal with the repercussions. Free means able to do whatever you want with no repercussions.
I would say people are less accountable for their actions when they're less informed of the repercussions, or the possible consequences, which definitely applies to the women in these videos.
I feel like the abortion question and stuff like that, or that really is a strong argument against that statement, though, because everyone knows the repercussions of having sex, and yet people are not responsible.
Back then when this was coming out, I would argue that with the lack of social media and the immediacy of the repercussions, if you get caught on camera doing something, very likely their brain, plied by alcohol, is not forming the thought that this could come back to bite them later, because there was no immediacy to these actions.
I guess
back then.
What I mean by that is, like, we had a problem as soon as girls' fathers stopped telling them that men are dogs. Okay?
I mean, I feel like, have the dads stopped
If
doing
their
that?
fathers were involved at all, they should have told these girls, you don't
you get reprimanded. Men, for a long time, men have gotten reprimanded for trying to protect their daughters.
Yeah.
If you tell your daughter, don't have sex because
But more
men
than that, like,
can't trust men, whatever,
Yeah.
like, you get reprimanded for that.
Thank you.
I've mentioned on the show more than a few times. There was like a boomer show that I loved in the mid 2000s called Las Vegas with Josh Duhamel and James Caan. And it was on ABC. It was a network television show. And one of the hallmarks of this show, taking place in Las Vegas, is all of the women are hypersexual, and all of them are sexually predatory, in the means that they know that being young, beautiful, and sexually active can get them the things that they want. And never once in the show is it shown as something bad or something that you shouldn't aspire to, because the men are shown also in a light that's not supposed to be derogatory, that men are sexual beings and will gladly give up wealth and things for sex. And neither side in that show seemed to shame them, which was indicative of the time period it was made in, meaning the early 2000s, when these discussions were pushing back against conservatism at a time when it probably was a little bit more relevant than they pretend it is to be now, right? Like the boogeyman of conservatism now, when everything in Hollywood and such is just classic, just awful neoliberalism. And there was episodes that would have like them filming stuff like that, and never once did they ever talk about it as if like, hey, maybe in 20 years I'm gonna regret this.
That would be just logical to me, but
it was, like I said, it was a different time.
Also, no one could have foreseen what that would happen when social media became a thing, like 15 years later. I can't blame them for not seeing that one coming.
A very big shift in a very short period of time.
Regardless, you shouldn't do something undignified, even if it'll be forgotten 5 seconds later. Even if, you know what I mean? You shouldn't do something that's beneath your dignity, even if you're the only one who will remember it. It doesn't matter if people are going to find out 25 years later or not.
Yeah.
You do that for your own integrity.
Yeah. Well,
you prevent yourself from ending up in those situations for your own integrity, for your own peace of mind.
I don't think
for your own safety.
I feel like honestly, technology and how busy our lives are now, like how we're constantly under stimuli, makes it people don't have to sit with their thoughts the way they used to.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we'll have to wait and see you at the. I imagine that maybe it's not 20 years from now, but there will be documentaries made in the same vein about the people who push OnlyFans.
This is just as much of a flash in the pan as Girls Gone Wild, in my opinion.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.